I think we got something here. All right. I wanted to start out this morning. I've done a compilation of some things I've come up with on the internet as sort of a Memorial Day tribute. Is there anyone in here who has done military service? We would like to honor and recognize you today. Do we have any vets with us? Oh, it started. Well, anyways, I've come up with some interesting items on the internet. I was kind of compiled a little tribute thing here. Take about maybe 14 minutes. And I think one of the things that changed my mind about this, I went on a field trip with a fourth grade class, and I remember Pastor was with me, or with us, as we went with Mrs. O. No, who was it? It was your wife, wasn't it? Maybe. Anyways, I was given one little fellow, Levi. He was with me, and he was a bit of a handful for me, and he was exasperating me. And I didn't know his background. I didn't know his background at all. And I was talking to Neil, and he said that his father was one of the ones that had been killed in, I think it was Iraq. And when I learned that, I did a 180-degree turnaround in my attitude towards him. And we sat and talked a long time, and he wanted to talk about his dad. And it just sort of changed the way I think about these kids. You know, you got to be patient, because you never really know what's going on in the lives of kids when they're acting up. There's a lot of stuff we don't know about. So, anyways, his father is one of the pictures you're going to see up here. I've done some research. I've pulled some things together, and I've identified 20 men in our area surrounding Midland County who have all been killed in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom. And so, if you will indulge me, we will start this thing up, if it will start. Got no sound, eh? All right, what am I doing wrong here, guys? It's paused. I'm not getting any sound. Are you getting any sound? Getting nothing. All right, well, let's do it. We'll do it the other way then. There's some sound. Well, that's not doing it either. Okay. Well, I hate to have to pass on this. Let's keep working on it. I heard something, but I didn't see anything. All right. Seems like this was always a problem with me before getting these videos to work.
Assembly Day at East Rochester School is always a good day, but for fourth grader Adrienne Hebert and her little sister Emily in kindergarten, they have no idea just how special it's about to become. And here's why.
You want to fix?
In a nearby classroom, Gunnery Sergeant Donnie Hebert is just home from Afghanistan. He wasn't supposed to return until April, and he's about to see his daughters for the first time in months.
Any nerves?
Well, you always have nerves. You know, you don't know which way they're going to react.
Well, let's see, shall we? First, Adrienne sees a welcome home banner. Initially, there's confusion, but when she sees her dad for the first time in a long time, it all gives way to this.
We have a very, very special guest today.
Emily breaks from the pack first.
Hi, baby.
And then seconds later, the Hebert family is whole again.
How you doing, baby?
And Daddy, too.
Muffled sobs into the chest of this Marine say it all. Although after the reunion, the girls gave it their best shot.
What kind of day was this for you?
Very special and loving day.
What did you think when you saw Daddy?
Very happy.
For Mom Jamie, it was a tough secret to keep. But with this kind of reaction, it was all worth it.
Just seeing them run up, it just waterworks.
Yeah, what a feeling, huh?
It is. You really can't explain it.
And you don't have to, Marine, as your little girls explained it for us. In Rochester, Josh McKelvin, WMUR News 9.
The Medal of Honor is awarded for an act of such courage that no one could rightly be expected to undertake it. On St. Michael's Day, September 29, 2006, Michael Monsoor would make the ultimate sacrifice. Mike and two teammates had taken position on the outcropping of a rooftop when an insurgent grenade bounced off Mike's chest and landed on the roof. Mike had a clear chance to escape, but he realized that the other two SEALs did not. In that terrible moment, he had two options: to save himself or to save his friends. For Mike, there was no choice at all. He threw himself onto the grenade and absorbed the blast with his body. Perhaps the greatest tribute to Mike's life is the way different service members all across the world responded to his death. Army soldiers in Ramadi hosted a memorial service for the valiant man who had fought beside him. Iraqi Army scouts whom Mike helped train lowered their flag and sent it to his parents. Nearly every SEAL on the West Coast turned out for Mike's funeral in California. As the SEALs filed past the casket, they removed their golden tridents from their uniforms, pressed them onto the walls of the coffin. The procession went on nearly half an hour. And when it was all over, the simple wooden coffin had become a gold-plated memorial to a hero who will never be forgotten. For his valor, Michael Monsoor becomes the 4th Medal of Honor recipient in the War on Terror. Like the three men who came before him, Mike left us far too early. But time will not diminish his legacy. We see his legacy in the SEALs whose lives he saved. We see his legacy in the city of Ramadi, which has gone from one of the most dangerous places in Iraq to one of the most safest. We see his legacy in the family that stands before us filled with grief, but also with everlasting pride. Mr. and Mrs. Monsoor, America owes you a debt that can never be repaid. This nation will always cherish the memory of your son. We will not let his life go in vain. And this nation will always honor the sacrifice he made. May God comfort you. May God bless America. Come on up. And now George and Sally Monsoor will be here, and military aid will read the citation.
As a member of a combined SEAL and Iraqi Army sniper overwatch element, tasked with providing early warning and standoff protection from a rooftop in an insurgent-held sector of Ramadi, Iraq, Petty Officer Monsoor distinguished himself by his exceptional bravery in the face of grave danger. In the early morning, insurgents prepared to execute a coordinated attack by reconnoitering the area around the element's position. Element snipers thwarted the enemy's initial attempt by eliminating two insurgents. The enemy continued to assault the element, engaging them with a rocket-propelled grenade and small arms fire. As enemy activity increased, Petty Officer Monsoor took position with his machine gun between two teammates on an outcropping of the roof. While the SEALs vigilantly watched for enemy activity, an insurgent threw a hand grenade from an unseen location, which bounced off Petty Officer Monsoor's chest and landed in front of him. Although only he could have escaped the blast, Petty Officer Monsoor chose instead to protect his teammates. Instantly, and without regard for his own safety, he threw himself onto the grenade to absorb the force of the explosion with his body, saving the lives of his two teammates. by his undaunted courage, fighting spirit, and unwavering devotion to duty in the face of certain death, Petty Officer Mansour gallantly gave his life for his country, thereby reflecting great credit upon himself and upholding the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service.
Just a reminder tomorrow that it's not about the picnics or the barbecues or the wonderful sales at Best Buy or ABC Warehouse. So, all right, let's move on that happy note. We are continuing with our study of the period of time between the fall of Judah and the advent of Christ, looking at the so-called period of silence where the Lord seemingly has ceased communicating his revelation, ending with Malachi. And last time we were looking at, we're working our way through Daniel. We started with Daniel 2. Looked at the image that Nebuchadnezzar had in his dream. And now we're up to the beasts, and we are comparing the beast to the image, and showing how they reveal certain characteristics and aspects of the various Gentile nations that are going to arise following the fall of Jerusalem. First with Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar, then the Persian Empire, then the Greek Empire, then the Roman Empire. We finished up with Babylon last week. Kind of went over the beast there, the lion with the wings, and we compared it to, or matched it up with, the golden head of Nebuchadnezzar's image. Now we're going to move on to the second beast, and that one corresponds to the silver chest and silver arms, and the beast, again, is something that it reveals certain characteristics of the empire that was going to follow the Babylonians. So, the second beast represents the Medo-Persian Empire, and that is indicated in the text in Daniel 7, where the angel explains it to Daniel. Now, as we look in this passage, I think we're at Daniel 7, I believe. All right, and it says, "And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and they said unto it, Arise, and devour much flesh." So, we see 4 characteristics in the passage here. First, this beast is a bear. Secondly, the beast is raised up on one side, so indicating there are 2 sides, but one side is higher than the other. And this again corresponds with the chest and the 2 arms of the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw. We also see that this beast has 3 ribs in its mouth. And finally, it is commanded to arise and devour much flesh. So, why the bear? Why not some other creature? Why not some other predator or dangerous animal, or an animal that frightens people? Maybe a fox. A fox is a predator, but it's not very frightening unless you happen to be a mouse. So it doesn't really convey the imagery that the Lord intends. Maybe an elephant. An elephant's large, and probably I think it's the largest land mammal. Alexander the Great, after he had conquered Persia, he continued eastward into India, and he encountered war elephants for the first time. And they inflicted heavy casualties on his armies because he didn't really know how to deal with them at first, but then he figured out how to do it. And he trained special squads of men with axes and large, sharp swords, and their job was to go in amongst the elephants, hack at their legs, chop at their trunks, make them crazy and insane with pain, and then they would more often than not, they would turn on their Indian handlers rather than the Persians. So they were dangerous, but they were not carnivorous. So you wouldn't see the ribs of another animal in the mouth of an elephant. You go with Komodo dragon. Why not a Komodo dragon? That's a pretty nasty little critter. They say that the mouth is full of the bacteria and germs of its last meal. And its usual method for taking down an animal would be to bite it. And he would stand back and wait till the infection took place. When the animal went down, then he'd go in and enjoy his meal. But still, that lacks certain characteristics that give us a glimpse into the character of this empire. And a snake, nobody likes snakes. If it's a venomous viper, that's very dangerous, but still does not convey what the Lord intends to reveal in regard to this empire. And we got the wolf, Again, a pretty dangerous animal. I don't know if you saw the YouTube video that went viral a couple of weeks ago where a pack of wolves were trying to take down the calf of a moose. And the moose was putting up a pretty good fight for about 12 minutes trying to fight these things off. But there were too many of them. They were able to coordinate their efforts, and they finally got the calf, and it did not end well for the calf. But still, it still does not convey the Lord's intended meaning as he's revealing the character of this empire, the Persian Empire. And of course, a wasp. Nothing shuts down the family and the home any faster than having a wasp get in the house. Everything comes to an end until you hunt down the wasp and you kill the wasp. And the Lord even said back in the Pentateuch, I think it was Exodus, that as the children of Israel left Egypt and they would go into the promised land, he says that he would drive the inhabitants out bit by bit by sending in swarms of hornets. But it still doesn't convey the imagery that the Lord intends for this second beast as it relates to the Persian Empire. So we're looking at the bear. Now, it's interesting as we look at the Persian Empire, there are quite a number of the books of the Old Testament are either written in part or wholly during the reign of the Persian kings. We have Ezra. During the period of Ezra, there are three kings mentioned: Cyrus, Artaxerxes, and Darius. During Nehemiah, Artaxerxes, Esther, Ahasuerus or Xerxes. Ahasuerus, I believe, was the Hebrew name, and Xerxes is the Greek name for the same king. In Daniel, you have Daniel. He is in his prophetic, Daniel is living during the time of Nebuchadnezzar all the way through to Cyrus, so he lives from the first king of the Babylonian Empire all the way to the end when Belshazzar is slain, and then Cyrus comes and takes over the kingdom. Haggai is written during the reign of Darius. Zechariah also during the reign of Darius. Malachi during the reign of Artaxerxes. So, the Persian Empire is important. Now, there are a lot of things we learn by looking at the Persian Empire. Got some more handouts here that are going to go along with what we're going to be studying. Just some reference information. Some of the kings we're going to touch on. We have this list of Persian kings. I believe the Persian Empire lasted for 219 years, beginning with Cyrus the Great, or Cyrus the Second, all the way down to Artaxerxes the Fifth. Darius III was the one in power when Alexander the Great came in with his Macedonian army and conquered him at the Battle of Gaugamela. Darius III fled the battlefield. Alexander narrowly missed nailing him with a spear, and he got away. About 6 months after the battle, he was actually assassinated by one of his own, Artaxerxes V. Then Alexander the Great killed him as punishment for killing Darius III, which is ironic because Alexander wanted to kill him himself. Now, there are also important benchmarks of prophecy that occur under the Persian rule. First, it was prophesied that Israel would serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. Jeremiah 25:11. And this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. After 70 years were accomplished, Babylon was going to be punished. Jeremiah 25:12. And it shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity. Isaiah 13:17. We see that Babylon's punishment will come at the hands of the Medes or the Persians. Isaiah 13:17. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Jeremiah 15:11. The Lord hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes, for his device is against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple. Jeremiah 51:28. Prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, the captains thereof, and the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. And the land shall tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babylon, to make Babylon a desolation without inhabitant. And then Daniel 5, 28, 30, 31, Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. And then now we believe that Daniel was now under Persian rule. He knew that the 70 years were almost accomplished. It had been established by Jeremiah. I think it was Jeremiah the prophet. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years whereof the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem. Daniel was carried away in the first wave of exiles, so he knows it's about 70 years. He's been in Babylon now under Persian rule, and it has been approximately 7 years, so he's looking for now Israel to be restored. Now, the return of Israel and to Judah and the restoration of the destroyed temple would happen at the hands of Cyrus of Persia. Now, this is an interesting prophecy in that Cyrus is named as the one who would restore 150 years or so before he was even born. And this is one of the reasons that the higher critics reject the inspiration of the gospel. They do not believe it's possible for this prophecy for this to have been a prophecy. They try to say that Daniel was written during the period of the Maccabees in the second and first centuries, and it had been written retrospectively, not prophetically. Isaiah 44, 24 to 28, thus saith the Lord, the Redeemer, and he that formed thee from the womb, I am the Lord that maketh all things, that stretcheth forth the heavens alone, that spreadeth abroad the earth by myself, that frustrateth the tokens of the liars, and maketh diviners mad, that turneth wise men backward, and maketh their knowledge foolish, that confirmeth the word of the servant, and performeth the counsel of messengers. Thus saith he to Jerusalem, thou shalt be inhabited, and the cities of Judah ye shall be built, and I will raise up the decayed places thereof. That saith to the deep, be dry, and I will dry up thy rivers. That saith of Cyrus 150 years before he would come, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid. Isaiah 54:1, thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of the kings, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. We also see that during the period of the Persians, the time clock for the arrival of Messiah is also established. Daniel has his vision, and the revelation of the 70 weeks of years are set forth, so that this prophetic clock prophesying the arrival of Messiah would occur with the Persian king's decree to rebuild Jerusalem. When the decree was made forth, then you would begin the clock towards when Messiah would arrive. Daniel 9, 25, 27, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem unto the Messiah the prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the city and sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Then Daniel, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, and even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So the problem in trying to determine this decree as the starting point for our prophecy is that there are actually 4 decrees regarding the rebuilding and return to Jerusalem. We have Cyrus in 539 BC. His is found in Ezra 1, 1-4, and Darius again in 519 BC, Ezra 5:3 and 7, Artaxerxes to Ezra in 547, then Artaxerxes to Nehemiah in 444 BC. Now, the problem in calculating which of these, I tried to calculate these using our current calendar system, and I couldn't come up with the right numbers. And then I found out and realized that the year, the calendar was according to the lunar year at the time this prophecy was made, rather than the solar year that we follow. So they had 360 days per year instead of 365. If you go back and make the adjustment from the time of Christ's crucifixion at 33 AD, and you count backwards, it's this last decree to rebuild Jerusalem and the temple that is the benchmark for Messiah's coming. And if you look in the New Testament, when Joseph and Mary brought Jesus into the temple, and Simeon and Anna, the Bible says that they were looking for the consolation of Israel. And I believe at least the faithful Jews who were students of their scripture understood that the time frame was just about right for Messiah to arrive. So from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem to the coming of Messiah would be a period of 438 years. And then Messiah was cut off after 483 years, which was 33 AD. Now we know that with the crucifixion of Christ, the prophetic clock has been suspended for a period of time. And we are now in the age of grace, and we're waiting for the final 7 years to be accomplished, which will occur either at or shortly after the rapture of the church when Antichrist is revealed. So right now we're in the period of grace. God has temporarily set aside Israel, and he is now doing his work on the earth through the church. And then when he is finished with the church will be raptured, and the clock moves forward for the final week of 7 years. Now, I've handed out to you some principles for understanding the beast images of Daniel. Will kind of help you to interpret some of the imagery here. First of all, there's the divine purpose principle, that these beasts are selected by the Lord to convey specific information relative to his prophecy. There's a historical principle. Prophecy matches history as it progresses through time. We have the great advantage of a lot of hindsight now. We can look back and see with certain historical events that we know have occurred that these prophecies fit only certain things that have happened. When we go forward to the leopard that has the four heads, that represents a kingdom, which then divides into 4 kingdoms, and then eventually 2 of those 4 kingdoms arise and have direct influencing control over Israel. We know the only kingdom that has ever matched has been the kingdom of the Greeks. There's the amplification and clarification principle, that usually when a theme is presented regarding one of these beasts, it is often restated and or clarified later in the same book. And we see that in Daniel 7. Daniel has the vision. These beasts appear before him, and then they are explained to him what they're going to mean. And further on in the other revelations in Daniel, the same thing happens. He sees the vision, he sees the beasts, and then they're explained to him what they mean. The ownership principle. God owns and controls the kingdoms of this world and their leaders. Whether they will acknowledge it or not, they are all the instruments of the Lord to accomplish his purposes. I don't think Nebuchadnezzar ever gave God any thought when he set out to conquer Judah and Jerusalem. But the Bible clearly states, the Lord says that Nebuchadnezzar was his servant, and he was accomplishing his purposes with Judah to punish Judah for its sins, and that Nebuchadnezzar was in the hands of God accomplishing his purposes. And the same thing for the other kings that arise. There's also the continuity principle. A beast represents the entire history of a power from its start to its finish with no gaps, or a power that comes into existence remains until it's overthrown or replaced. So each beast represents one Gentile kingdom, and it may represent that Gentile kingdom as it manifests itself in other forms, but it's still the same kingdom. Like with the four-headed leopard, that is the kingdom of the Greeks. And the 4 heads represent the kingdom of the Greeks divided into 4 after Alexander the Great dies, and he separates or splits his kingdom up between his 4 generals. And so they continue with Grecian rule, even though Alexander the Great is gone, the four kings now are still pushing forward the Hellenistic philosophy throughout the world, trying to bring them all into the Greek worldview. We have the succession principle. The beasts represented are sequential. They represent kingdoms that occurred one after another, with each taking over from the previous kingdom after it was finished ruling and conquered. So there is no overlapping. As you look at the scripture and you look at history, there's no overlapping between the bear and the between the lion and the bear, between the bear and the leopard, and between the leopard and the ferocious beast that's later described. Each one represents one kingdom. The characteristics principle: when multiple horns appear on the head of a beast, they represent those lesser divisions of the original kingdom which rule concurrently. As with, again, the leopard with the four heads. These four kings split off from Alexander's empire, but they all continue to rule concurrently. The characteristics principle: the various colors, objects, or characteristics associated with the beasts explain something about the nature, character, or behavior of the kingdom that it represents. So we want to get if you want to get some idea about how this kingdom is going to rule, the Lord reveals that through the character and nature of the beast that he uses to prophetically give you a glimpse into that kingdom. The forward view principle: in visions involving predictions of the future, the divinely inspired authors are looking forward from their time forward. And then the separate power principle: separate kingdoms that arise independently of each other will normally be represented by separate beasts. I think we'll pick up next week. We'll look at very interesting characteristics of the bear as they apply to the Persian kingdom. I found this a very fascinating study. There are certain things that bears do that give us some insight into the character of the Persian Empire. As I understand it, next week will be my last week for the summer, right? Just about to the end.